Okay, well, welcome everybody to our drop-in discussion. This is a regular part of our European Leaders Learning Community, and it happens on the third Wednesday of every month at this time. So we will have some people joining our call live, and you are welcome to do that any month that you're available at this time. And you're also able to watch this as a recording that you can find on our website. There are lots and lots of great resources on that website, so I hope you guys are checking in with it regularly. And every month we have a theme, and this month our theme is being media wise. We're talking about the very real topic of polarization that happens in the social media arena, in communication in general in our world, and we're talking about how it's affecting us, what we need to learn in order to be prepared to be good kingdom people in the context of social media and communication. And so that is the topic of our discussion today. There's some great talks and articles on the website that you can find in addition to watching this drop-in discussion. If you do join the call live, then you can type questions into the chat and we will get to them as we are able to. But with no further ado, I would like to introduce the three wonderful people who are joining our discussion today. And I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves. But just quickly, we have Violet, we have Tim, and we have Liz. And thank you guys so much for being with me and for taking time to talk about this topic together. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, this particular month, I think Tim and I are the only people, oh no, Liz obviously lives close to me, but Tim and I have met, Violet and I have not met, and I don't know if any of the three of you have met one another. No, so this is kind of cool, just willing to hop on a discussion and have a chat with people about quite a live topic with people that you have not met before. So thank you for being courageous and willing. And I'm just going to get each of you to introduce who you are and where you are briefly before we get started. So Violet.
Yeah, I'm here in Harpenden, England. I'm originally from the United States, but serving here doing DTS and music things.
Awesome. Well, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. And then we have Liz.
Yep. Hey there, I'm Liz, and I'm located in southern Spain where, me and my husband have been here about 5 years, and we've got 3 little kiddos.
Yes, 3 beautiful kids. Thanks for taking time from your beautiful kids to be with us, Liz. And Tim.
Yeah, my name is Tim. I am originally from South Korea. I currently living in Oslo, Norway, leading YMTV, and also I'm now working on my master's thesis.
Mm-hmm. And what is your master's thesis in?
It is about, so I'm doing a course in global journalism, and the thesis is about media and migrant integration in Norway.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, so you may be more of an expert in this subject than any of the rest of us. We will see how we get on.
We'll see.
And so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Miranda, and I'm also in the south of Spain. So Liz and I are near neighbours. So it's fun to be on this call together. So like I said, there was some great material on the website this month, trying to get into this kind of tricky subject of what's been happening in social media, especially over recent months, and this experience of polarization. And one of the phrases that comes up a lot when we talk about this topic is the idea of an echo chamber. This idea that because of the way social media works and algorithms and so on, we so often are seeing, reading, watching things that are just affirming our own opinion. And we're not really in a place where we're hearing diverse views and you know, have an opportunity to listen to people who think differently from us. So I'm really interested, as we kind of launch into this discussion, what your experience has been of that. Is that something that sounds familiar to you? What are your thoughts on the echo chamber of social media? Anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I think hearing the echo chambers, like listening to the big discussion about it, that was the first time I even heard that term. And I thought that was really good, because I was like, oh, this is like putting one thing into words of like, so like when I'm with people and we're talking about things, it's easy to be with similar minded people, and like all of us are just getting on, we're discussing things, and then and it can get a bit heated, but we're like, oh, we're like on the same page. But then like you go on social media and it's like completely different, or like you're seeing these different points of views, and then you're kind of like, whoa, like people are not thinking the same way I'm thinking, which is interesting. And then, but then I think, yeah, so I remember going back to the United States when things were getting really heated in like the winterish time, right before spring. And that was like interesting, being in the UK, in Europe, and kind of how like we're all thinking and seeing things from the outside and have our own opinions. And then when you're in it, you're seeing like, whoa, there's so much like, yeah, polarization and just like different points of views, and you're like, okay, this is like culture shock for sure. And then I got to just experience like being in like even different cultures, like being in the Russian culture and like their point of views, but then I'd be hanging out with my other friends and then they have different point of views. So it was really interesting for me being there for like a short time and just realizing like, wow, these people are not even aware that they're in an echo chamber. And I think that's interesting to see when you know, like, oh, echo chambers, then you're like, okay, these people, I think I realized the importance of like, oh, I actually have to be intentional of like seeing different points of view. So like even on social media, I have to like start following people who don't really believe the same things I believe, just so I could like have different perspectives and things like that to understand. So found that interesting.
Interesting. So you've kind of pointed out the difference between meeting people in person and having conversations around something, listening to their opinions in that context, versus just kind of seeing people's posts on social media and realizing, oh, they think something different from me. I have no idea what's underneath that statement they just made because it's just so foreign, kind of thing. Yeah. Interesting. Any responses from Tim or Liz?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting how, like you call it, the echo chamber or the culture you're in, you know, can literally blind you in a way from maybe the other side or, you know, other things going on. And I felt like we had a very real encounter with that this week, actually, as we had a new staff join, and they were joining us from a country where we've never had a staff from. And and something that to many people on the team wasn't a political issue about this person's country was clearly a political issue and a very sensitive issue, you know, but reading the news and getting your information, you know, from the outside, people were having these opinions and not even realizing the implications of the opinions that they had about this situation going on in this country. And so it was like, not only were, you know, we seeing the short-sightedness in our view, but also the small things that were being said were incredibly hurtful because we didn't understand the implication, you know,
right.
So I think it's just a continual battle for us, you know, that we got to continue seeing from the Lord's perspective. And, you know, it's a temptation, isn't it, to cling on to these viewpoints.
Yeah, it really strikes me the way you said small things that were said were incredibly hurtful because we didn't understand the implications. And how often on social media or online, so easy to just post small things that are then become incredibly hurtful because we don't understand the implications. I mean, I think that phrase kind of sums up where we are. Yeah. Thanks, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
Tim.
Yeah, I think I kind of echo what you guys have said, but
oh, well done.
Exactly, yeah. But I think in terms of like echo chamber, I think, you know, the reason why we like to be there is because it is a comfort zone, you know, because we are with the same idea, you know, with the people who have similar, you know, thoughts. So so it's comfortable for us, you know, to create that easily, maybe sometimes even without knowing it. So I think yeah, we need to take a risk, you know, to go out of this comfort zone, I think. And then I think it is hard, it is not easy, you know, but I think this is something that we should learn how to do that. And I guess that's why this discussion is important, to think about it. And the social media is definitely something that you know, it's a new technology, it's something that you would never experience before. So it's a definitely new outcome, I think, that we are facing.
Yeah, and this idea that it's going to take us hard work to find ourselves in a healthier space with regards to social media. We're going to come back to that, but before we get to it, I really wanted to bring up this idea that Rebecca Koenig brought up, which was in her talk on the Leadership Lounge. And she talked about the idea that we cling to our opinions because we so want to belong. We want to have this sense of belonging. And being part of this, I'm going to call it an opinion group, gives us a feeling of belonging. Oh, okay, these are my people. That, you know, I know what their view is going to be on such and such. I belong to this group. And she raises the question of identity and the extent to which that need or finding in our opinion group a place of belonging and identity kind of betrays the fact that we need a stronger sense of identity in our belonging to God's people. So as I say that, I realize, wow, we all have so many different definitions of God's people. But what does it mean for you, this idea of belonging, and how that relates to our need to kind of sign up to a particular opinion group?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like what Tim was alluding to, this comfort zone, you know. And you know, what's easier to, you know, to just do that, to take the easy, you know, jump into the easy group of opinions and thoughts, or to, you know, be on your knees interceding and asking the Lord for a fresh vision, you know, like to give us his perspective. I mean, it's always going to be easier to go with the stream, you know, or whatever stream we might find ourselves closest to, you know. So I think there's a lot in the area of risk for us as believers. You know, where do we want to live? In the comforty zone, or you know, on the edge?
I think also the question is, how do we find our identity, you know, and how do we define who we are? And then the word actually tells us so many things, you know. It talks about our identity. You are that. They frame us. But I think as a Christian, we have a strong identity as a Christ. And so I think, I mean, it sounds like, oh, of course, we need to find our identity in God, you know, but I think this is something that we can go back to. And then that's why I think we also need to know God, who our God is. And that's why I think it is so important to be part of DTS and to learn about who our God is, God's nature and character, you know. So so I think maybe that could be something that we can cling to. That's where we can belong to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that question, because I think it's in our core being that we all of us long to belong.
Yeah.
And so like, even if you're a Christian, you're not a Christian, and I'm like putting myself in a situation of when you're on social media and there's this almost like this fear of missing out, or kind of like, if I don't say something right now, like that's it, people are going to claim or like say this is who I am, or label me as this group, or this is what I believe in. And I remember like watching that happen on social media. Like, if you don't repost this thing, like that means that you don't care about this situation, or if you do this, you know. And it was like all so very black and white, and it was like this feel, I even felt it, I was like, oh my gosh, like if I don't post this, that means that blah blah blah, like I'm this kind of person. And like once you do, then people see like, oh, like I can relate to you, I can be in your community, or like we can be friends. And if you don't, then we can't be friends. But then, so then people are feeling this fear of like, well, I don't want to just be alone in this. But then I feel like that almost is like an illusion then of like the belonging, almost. I don't know,
Right.
it sounds a bit abstract, but and kind of like what does belonging mean? And I think it is found in Christ. But I think as believers, then it is like the risk for us, because I think being in Christ and kind of like having that choice of like, I'm going to belong in this community or this thinking, and it's a scary place to be in because it's in the unknown, or it's like you never know fully the answers, or it is maybe literally simply Jesus. And I think people in media don't want to see that. Like they want like more like stats or facts and things like that. But I think for us as believers, it is like this weird, scary place to be in, of like, I'm not going to choose to be on a side or be in this awkward position of like listening on both ends. So it is a tension.
Yeah.
In that too.
Yeah. And there's a couple things that strike me from what you're saying. One of them is the immediacy. There's no time for us to take our time to really, and we're going to talk about kind of what does it mean to do the hard work of digging into a place of understanding, but there is no time for that. You know, you need to like say where you stand right now. So the immediacy factor, but then also the reality of this world with social media and so on is that a lot of people are feeling really lonely. So they want to belong. And even if that connection, that belonging, like you're saying, Violet, is kind of an illusion, you know, but it's still something when they're actually feeling quite isolated and lonely. So to me, that raises a question of, well, okay, so what is our response to be to lonely people who need a place to belong? Maybe there's another way. Maybe there's something more that we could do, so that there are other options. You know. So should we talk about this this idea of hard work? We're kind of skirting around the idea that it's just much easier to have a surface opinion, to kind of read the bullet points, to get an idea from a couple of memes that somebody posts. Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. That's what this issue is about. And it's much harder to do the hard work of dialoguing and drawing close, and creating space for people whose opinions are different from our own. So I just wonder what your thoughts are about how we might go about coming in the opposite spirit, I guess. That's how we talk about it in YWAM, right? You know, we want to live differently in this space. So what might that look like? What might that look like where you are and in your context?
Yeah, I think we need to admit that difference is a good thing. You know, we need to learn to embrace the difference, like pluralism, and we need to see that the difference as a difference, not being wrong. And I think I like this analogy of, you know, vehicle. You know, as the vehicle moves forward, when the wheels are balanced both right and left. And then I think the society same, you know, we need both right and left, you know, so we need this, you know, like the difference there. And then I think how do we embrace that? I think go back to also your question about belongingness and people who are lonely. How do we affiliate to them? You know, and I think we need to learn to have this empathy. You know, I think that is essential for the society today. You know, with empathy, that society will be able to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves, as it is, you know, saying in the Proverbs 31:8. But also with empathy, we learn to listen, you know, those different opinions, even if we disagree. And I think this empathy, and from there, I think this learning, listening part is important. You know, I think that listening is the, in a sense, best way to communicate, actually. You know, a lot of people are just willing to write and then talk, but how much are we listen?
That's so good, Tim.
Yeah,
that like
thanks, Tim.
The biggest thing from that is like, what would Jesus, with this whole thing happening, like what would Jesus do in this time? And Jesus was so good. That's what he did. He would listen, and he hung out with people who were very different from him. And when I think about the table that Jesus would extend, it was with the tax collectors, the prostitutes, like all these different kinds of people, but it wasn't him just sitting there like telling them their opinions and things. So I think that is something that we can do as in this culture, in this time, is learning how to listen. And I think that's been challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Violet, what makes it hard for us to listen, do you think? Oh, sorry. I think my internet is a bit unstable, so my timing is off. Liz, you go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, you know, I just feel like we all have more natural enemies right now, you know, like it's like, you know, we might be able to tell by the way someone's dressing, or, you know, an outward even symbol. Oh, and we might get a little nervous inside, thinking, oh gosh, we're kind of on different sides here, you know. And so I just think maybe like there's a lot of work for us in the area of disarming, you know, talking about moving in the opposite spirit, like so hospitality, for instance, is a great way to move in the opposite spirit. And of course, listening is part of that, but also just when we encounter people, you know, we're prayerful, we've prepared, we, you know, we do little hospitable things that show the person we deeply love and care about them. And you know, there's no doubt they will encounter Jesus, you know, as we do that with Jesus, you know. And I just really, you know, he himself was the most amazing disarmer, you know. And so I'm just thinking hospitality might just be a real key for us.
Yeah, it's so true. But I think the hard part is like doing it.
Right.
So I think like because I was challenged by this, even when COVID hit, and here in England, you could only do like have one person in a household thing. So I was like, okay, like, God, I want to learn how to value the individual, or like hear people's stories and things like that. So we would try to, so we like took Shabbat like a thing. So every like once a week, like, okay, a meal, and then invite one person over. And that was like an amazing like practice that happened in my life. But then in YWAM, it's easy to do that because everyone has that value of like, oh yeah, like let's get together, community. But then when I went back home to the States and kind of just like gave that vision to my friends, like, oh, like, do you guys want to do like a meal together? And everyone was like, I want community. Where's community? I want people, da 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 da. And I was like, that's great. Like, I want to do that too. So let's get together on like once a week. And like, it was so hard to just get like one meal, just one day out of the week, and for commitment. And I think, I guess I'm like speaking as a young person, I think a lot of us probably have like commitment stuff, but like, but I think in the West we're just so individualistic, and so it's hard to like, I don't know, commit to a meal and like knowing that that's like for community, and maybe they'll like go to one thing and like there'll be good conversations, but then like you just get so busy. So I think that busyness probably gets in the way of like being intentional and actually listening to the person. It's quite easy to just repost something on your story and have an opinion or reply to someone's like post instead of actually like, hey, let's sit down and actually talk about this, or like something that you disagree with. Or I don't usually get into like heated discussions on social media, but I have seen certain views and I was like, I would be so interested just to sit down with this person, because it was very extreme, but I was like, I'm just curious to know, like, if I had coffee with them and I just sat there and listened to them, like you would get some really good perspectives. And I think that also as Christians, like we probably have like a bad rep too of like just constantly putting our opinions out there and not really listening.
Right.
And I think modeling just listening will speak so much of like, wow, this like Christian just literally sat with me and just listened to me. And I've never really had that. Instead of them just like, I don't know, shaming it all.
Yeah, no, that's great, Violet. And within the materials this month, several people mentioned this idea of sitting together and talking. I remember somebody teaching on a communication workshop I was part of, and he was saying the more significant a communication piece is, the more personal it needs to be. And I find that really fascinating. Like if you want to talk about something that really matters, it needs to be close up and personal. You know, you don't send an email when you could make a phone call. You don't make a phone call when you could sit down in person and have coffee, if it's something that really matters. And so several people in the material this month, they mentioned hosting meals with people of different worldviews and opinions and identity kind of markers, if you like, places they'd identify. They talked about just meals together. They talked about something called dialogue coffee or something like that. I think that was part of the leadership lounge, something Tova mentioned. So I guess my question here is, because we're talking about social media, we're talking about connecting online. How do you do this? How do you do this online? Is there a way for us to cultivate places of dialogue and connection and listening within social media, or at least in an online context? What do you guys think?
It's a hard question, especially on online context, you know. I don't know. I mean, yeah, but I mean, I don't know, because it's hard, because we don't see internet in the Bible. So we cannot really learn anything from there. Well, of course, definitely something that we can learn from Jesus was that he knew exactly when to comfort people, but also he also knew exactly when he need to confront people. And I think, yes, we want to listen what others say and have empathy, but also there's a time we must speak up. And then we talk about training people, discipleship, which means we need to sometimes confront. So how do we do that? I don't know, especially confrontation in social media. I'm not sure how we can do that. I mean, maybe one thing that I can see right now is maybe having a Zoom conversation, you know, but of course we cannot take it, you know, change with any other like coffee conversation or any having meal together. And another thing is, I think the relationship is the key, you know. So yeah, so I think how do we build up relationship? So I think Zoom, Skype call or Zoom call, or you know, things like that matters still, you know. I think it's something that we can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, having a group of people willing to host something like that, advertising through something like Instagram, about a discussion night on this topic, whatever. I think there's enough people out there. There's enough, opinions and people that you can find people who are willing to be vulnerable and you know what I mean? Like not be super volatile, because, those people who are being crazy volatile, it's going to be hard in a dialogue. But I think there's enough people out there that can rein it in, and they're excited even just at the possibility of getting to hear from others and share in a peaceful way. I think people are hungry for that. So I could see like a Zoom discussion thing going really well.
Yeah, I find it so challenging, because then I remember even what Rebecca talked about too was like, how do we have dialogue? Because the Christian language that we have, it can, even in YWAM and the things that we use and stuff, like it can be a bit like foreign, or can isolate, or like build a wall. And so I think that's one area where I'm like, how do we do that? Because even with like algorithms and how that works out too, like if we want to have dialogue with people who are different from us, how do we like create media and things that will invite people who are different from us to actually like dive into that and make these things that will like inspire people to like, oh, actually this would be interesting, let me join in, and not have just like the same people kind of jumping on in that. So I think that is a challenge.
Right, it's a challenge.
Actually, just to add one more thing, I think one thing, very easy thing that we can do right now actually to minister to people is actually like their post, like their photos in Instagram. I think that's something that we can easily do, or commenting something encouraging, and then I feel like we're a little bit lacking in maybe liking others' posts, maybe, of course, because too many people these days, it matters a lot, so I think that can definitely help also, maybe.
The need for affirmation and encouragement in a space that is often lacking.
Yeah, and I think, Miranda, from your talk about communication, with the discipleship bias, like I think it would take great care, you're going to do something like this, great care to communicate sort of the, I don't know, guidelines maybe is not the right word, but hey, these are the kind of the things we're going to do in this dialogue. We're not going to do this, but we are going to do this, and we so that everybody comes in fully into the picture of what they're saying yes to. So I think it's possible, but hard work maybe.
So that makes me think about ways in which we might train one another, and train young people in this this fine art of careful communication, what of respectful communication. But even before we came on the call here, I was just saying, our daughter turned 13 this week, and she got a phone for her birthday, and so we're right in the midst of that whole, okay, what does discipleship look like for young people in the context of a world where they are hyper connected? How do we train them in what respectful communication looks like, when it's all too easy for them to just be trained by the culture? So I know we've got people on this call who are 100% committed to discipleship. So I wonder if you have ideas. What does it look like for us to actually start to face some of this reality and get serious about wanting to be Christ followers in the midst of the culture that we're part of?
Well, I remember when I did my DTS, one of the first things our DTS leader said, like on day one, was he said, we don't have many rules, but one that we hold very important is that we're never, ever going to talk negatively about any country in the world. And he's like, and that especially means your own as well. And I remember that was pretty, I felt like what it did is all of a sudden open up just a place of safety, you know? And we had many people, it was a big school, 45, lots of different nations represented. And I remember that wasn't just something he said, but it was something that came up throughout the school. And I felt like it was really brought us together as a school. And so it's something that in every DTS that I've led, we've always had that. And people love it, because even for yourself, all of a sudden it's very freeing to know that it's not okay for me to talk bad about the country I come from, because we're so used to even maybe being embarrassed about things going on in our own country that maybe we put it down, or, you know, that's often a lot of our problem, is being negative about where we come from, you know? So I just feel like it on every level just provides a safety.
Nice, which goes back to this hospitable space. Yeah. Any thoughts there, Violet, as you prepare to lead your first school?
It is a challenging one, but it also, I'm excited, because I think it is the whole thing of like just going back to the gospel. And I'm like, the whole thing of like, we don't give it enough credit, and kind of like, this is an opportunity for us as leaders, as people who are discipling, to see, okay, Jesus knew, probably, I'm sure, that we would be living in this day of age. And so it's kind of like asking the question of like, okay, Jesus, like, if you had TikTok, like, what would you do? Or I don't know, like simple, like it's like super simple and grounded, but like also knowing that creativity and art and media, music and stuff like that stuff is so influential. And if we like disciple well people who are passionate about these things, and that's who we have coming into DTSs, the things that they'll be releasing, it's just going to be an outflow of that. But it is like our roles as disciples, as you were saying, Liz, of like teaching them like, we don't do this, or like, this is what's happening in the world, this is what we believe in, and this is what we believe is true. And so I even like my sister, she's like 16, 17, and she's like on TikTok, has like all these followers and stuff. And I was just encouraging her. I'm like, you have influence right now. People are like seeing what you're doing. Like, what are you going to do with it? And like, she would go on these like live things and like preach the gospel, like naturally, like not even, people are like, there's crazy stuff on social media. Like young people are very vulnerable and open, and especially during COVID, like that's the only way that they're connecting. And so they'll just talk freely about their problems. And it's just an opportunity for these young people, like, oh, actually, like, Jesus loves you, and like simple things like that. And there's boom, community, and people are like dialoguing and talking about like, hey, like, you're doing this, but you love Jesus. Like, that's interesting. So I think we are just touching the surface of it. So it excites me. Like, yeah, it's scary. It's like, oh my gosh, like all this is happening. But it's like, okay, let's create as a pull on people around us who can, and then, I don't know, I see it as an invitation.
Yeah, as you're talking, I was kind of thinking, wouldn't it be fun sometime to do like can you imagine Jesus and the Romans and the Pharisees and the disciples, but in the world of social media, like all these kind of posts going around, the Pharisee posted this, and then genuinely, like, how would Jesus respond, and how does he coach his disciples in their response? That could be like a whole interesting little project for somebody. But before we go on a rabbit trail, Tim, you are part of an exciting new project, and this kind of fits in here, I think.
Yeah, I think, well, just to comment on the last part, I think we have a great value on communication, which is communicate with integrity. So I think that is something that we need to remember, as we communicate. We talked about listening, but I think it goes both. We listen to our friend, peer to peer, or people around us, but also we listen from Holy Spirit. So I think we need just a little bit of time, and then have a pause moment to, okay, let's take a time and then write something. We came to this so far, we start with emails, maybe it takes time, and then we maybe did SMS. It still takes time, but now Facebook Messenger, and then now like Snapchat, which is instant, and it doesn't even stay there; it disappears. So, so I think the question is, how are we gonna do something about this? And Violet, you mentioned about the people vulnerable and open for something right now as COVID-19, especially the young people. And I think it is very important for us as YWAM. How do we target those people? How do we reach out to those Generation Z? So, and then that's why, yes, we started this team for social media, and we are going to look into those questions, difficult question, how we're going to use Snapchat or maybe TikTok or YouTube, different social media to reach out to those more people. And I think we saw actually a lot of numbers that a lot of people actually coming to Christ during this time, as a lot of churches do online stream, live streaming the Sunday service. So I think we see, and then we saw that even YWAM, Facebook and YouTube, we saw a lot of people engaging and then watching, the content. So I think we need to think about this not as okay, social media is something bad, let's not use it, let's stay away from it, but really, how do we embrace this? Because it give us voice, it let us speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. So I think there is a definitely time where we need to speak up, and for sharing gospel, we need to do that too. So I think it is a great tool that we can use. Yeah,
thanks, Tim. I'm struck, Liz, by what you said about the beginning of your DTS and this idea of making room for all cultures.
Yeah.
And I think in YWAM, we, historically, that's been part of who we are, this desire to make space for different cultures and to honor different nations. I don't know where we are right now, though, in terms of our practice of honoring one another. And one of our articles was called How to Walk Hand in Hand When You Don't See Eye to Eye. And of course, that's happening in the culture around us, but it's a very real thing within our movement as YWAM. Of course, as we get more and more numerous, and we have people from all kinds of different places and experiences, what a challenge to continue to walk hand in hand. I don't know if there's anything on your minds that relates to that topic. What do we need as YWAM? What's the invitation to us from God? Any cautions that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like any community, it's easy even for our YWAM communities, right, to get visions and groups and and I think it's our responsibility to kind of ignore all that, not in a sense of like being la la land, but be like, you know what, I see this happening and I'm gonna say no. So there's a little bit like feistiness I think we need to have as we see this happening around us. Of course, grace for the people involved in all this, but I think we need to continue teaching on things like comparison, jealousy, these kinds of things, because we're workers, we're probably all pretty high functioning, like it takes a lot of work to be in YWAM, right? So anyway, I just feel like if we continue challenging one another and just individually, just when we see this happening, just say no, and move against it, and how Don't be afraid to sit at a different table, or don't be afraid to, I don't know, invite a certain person over. I don't know what it is,
Yeah, yeah.
But I think often we just kind of go, oh, okay, well, this is happening, so I'll just, I'll just find my place and keep going.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And I wonder if, like you say, we're all kind of high functioning, cross-cultural people, but that takes a lot of work, like you said. And so often our capacity, I think, can become limited. And so it actually is easier for us to metaphorically sit at the table with the people who agree with us. That's easier and more comfortable because we're stretched in so many other parts of our lives. So yeah, sure. that's a real challenge, eh?
Yeah, and that kind of hits on like way of life, like the way we live, doesn't it? Because I've been thinking about this as we've been talking, but just this, ideas of kind of living where there's space, living with margin, and I think in general, most of us, we're just so busy, like what you're saying, but it's worth fighting for, to have space, Yeah.
Yeah, let's be safe and learn to listen. When there's space, we don't need to be reactive. Yeah, that's good, Liz. Yeah.
One of the like, I think it was Anita, right? Is that the blog, the article that you're referencing?
Yes, but it's Lynetta, I think.
Yeah. But she said, this is like a quote from her, but she said, also people need to know our commitment and need to feel safe in expressing their views. In all of this, we must refuse cynicism because we believe in God's vision for the world and have hope and ultimate redemption. And so I love that, because it's like, I love values. And I think when we have that vision and kind of remind ourselves of like, no, like we're still in this process of redemption and kind of like the vision of cultivation, and we're here on this earth to continue on cultivating that and cultivating relationships, and there's so much happening right now, but yeah, just like knowing and creating that safe place. And I think with busyness and everything like that, it is a check and a constant thing that we have to remind ourselves to kind of reevaluate, kind of like, okay, like I'm busy, but it's kind of like, but my value is this. So it's like, I have to like sacrifice things and to create a culture of valuing people, valuing their stories, valuing, the conversation, and finding out what are the things that, how are people hurting right now? Like who is in need?
Yeah, it's good. Any more to add on that topic, Tim?
I think I want to go back to this empathy, and also listening to others. And I think when we do that, I think there is hope. When we listen and when we feel others' pain as mine, and cry together, laugh together, smile together, I think then there is hope. And then that is also, I think, what Jesus had shown us too. So being like Christ-like, I think it's something again and again we commit and we follow to do that.
Yes, so many thoughts come to my mind, but I guess the bottom line is that as we own the reality that we're all in a process of formation that is never finished. You don't do your DTS and then woohoo, you're discipled. But we're in this lifelong process of becoming more like Jesus. And as such, that means I have a lot to learn. And can I come into these contexts with that mindset that I have a lot to learn from you, and I have thoughts, I have opinions, but they need to be held lightly as I come in as a learner to whatever context. it's just so easy to become entrenched, isn't it? And to kind of feel like, okay, my opinions are all sewn up. I've formed my opinion. It's not a movable thing anymore. But actually, no, I still have a lot to learn. I am not God.
Yeah.
You know, no surprises there.
Mm-hmm.
This quote also from Inetta. Lots of great quotes in her article. She said, if we will not do the hard and slow work of cultivating shalom in the community of brothers and sisters in Christ, friends and colleagues, what makes us think that we will be able to cultivate it in the public spheres?
Oh, yeah.
What a huge challenge to us, hey?
Yes.
You know, we talk so easily about what we're called to in terms of, you know, being, you know, discipling nations and so on. But can we, in our smaller contexts, learn these deep lessons?
Yeah. Mm.
I guess that's a rhetorical question, but it would be nice to hear you all go, yes, we can.
Try. Yeah. Yeah.
Or no, we can't, but God can. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, this idea of something I've been thinking about is objectivity. You know, and that's not something we talk about a lot, but recently God's been just bringing it to my mind, and you know, this idea that let's not come to the table with fully formed ideas all the time, which is going to be a bit unnatural, because even as we lead DTSs or lead outreaches, you know, a lot of times we're gathering experience, we're learning from those experiences. Oh, you know, it's building us up, and we're, you know, oh, now we know how to handle this situation when it comes up again, you know. But can we gain experience, grow in the Lord, but remain objective, you know, as new things come, you know? And I do think I feel that invitation to step more into objectivity for myself anyway.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and maybe we could put humility there as well as objectivity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time. I don't know if there's anything that any one of you kind of still has in your mind that you really wanted us to touch on, or what is outstanding for you? This, obviously, we're not going to talk about everything that we'd love to on this topic in such a short time, but is there anything in particular? Okay. I'm just waiting for Violet because she really looks like she's thinking now.
No, I'm just inspired. I love this. I think if anything out of this, I'm like, I feel like we just need to be learners.
Yeah.
And just coming into each situation, anything that offends us or anything that's like different, it's like, that is an opportunity for us to learn. That is an opportunity. Yeah. Because it's true, like, we are in this world and we're constantly growing, and we could either just stay in this place of being stagnant and kind of like, well, this is what I believe. But God is in constant movement, and like we have this life and we get to learn from it. And I think that is beautiful, even though it's hard. But I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd love to come back around to what Tim said, which is that he's excited about this whole arena of social media, and you know, with that, God is never not active. He is at work in places where we see him and we don't see him. So that is maybe a question for us to take away from this time. How do we see him at work, and how can we jump in and participate in ways that build kingdom, build trust, build bridges? I also wanted to end with what it says in James about wisdom, because as I was preparing for this time, I was thinking, man, we just need wisdom. And in this translation, it says, if you need wisdom, this is what it says in the book of James, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking, which again brings us back to the posture of being a learner. So may we be blessed as learners. Those of us who are here on this call, those of us who are watching, and for all of us in YWAM, may we be blessed in our posture of being humble learners as we continue in the ways of God. So thank you guys for being part of this discussion. Really appreciate the input that each one of you brought. And then just a final note to everyone who watches this as a recording, that you can go to the website, check out those resources, the ones that you missed, all very worth catching up on. And then next week, there is a monthly roundup. So whatever you don't get to read or watch, you can watch the roundup, and then you can make sure that you get the overview of the topic in that way. So thank you so much for being part of this with us, and bless you guys.